Good evening, everyone in the room and in the Zoom. Good to see you. Welcome. This is the second full day of our Sesshin, and we are all again well seated in our usual mind, the mind that gets caught and entranced, the mind that has lost track of one bright pearl, perhaps. Second day, first day, second day, third day, so distinctly different. If you were sailing along the first day, today can be a real challenge, and vice versa, or just a mixture. So maybe there have been some moments of quiet, even with difficulties, even joy, or that intimate feeling of the usual. Once we get settled in, it's only the second full day, and yet it feels perhaps, if you're like me, like we've been here forever. We're in the timeless zone. And even during Sesshin, we're in active and continuous refuge in the three jewels of Buddha and Dharma and Sangha. Still, we notice what shows up, what interposes itself and gets in the way of embodying our active refuge, our clear, bright mind. In the line in the sutra, this is the practice play of ordinary mind, the practice place of ordinary mind. We come to a place that's full of the language of the extraordinary mind, and we find our ordinary mind, and we get to work with it, with a lot of help and a lot of support, and a terrific schedule that keeps us on track. So we've been, for those who are not here in person, we've been copying the fascicle from Dogen, that is One Bright Pearl by Dogen Zenji. And everybody here has spent time now alone with this fascicle, copying and considering it personally. So first I'd like to consider the image of one bright pearl and bring up the fact that there are many translations of this fascicle. And there's one by Shohaku Okumura that takes exception to how it's been translated. And I'll tell you about that in a minute, but whenever I think of Shohaku Okumura, I think of a Sesshin. Maybe it was the first time I ever came across him, met him, and it certainly was the first time I had ever been subjected to Dogen. That's the way it felt going into it. But I had an experience now. Shohaku speaks very quietly, and he has a very strong Japanese accent. So it was a very hot day, 2 p.m, of a very hot day on a porch where the sun was beating down. So it was really hot. And he was speaking very quietly, and I had to strain, and I could not stay awake. I couldn't stay awake. But what he was saying, and he is a Dogen scholar and a wonderful teacher, you know, in his own style. But what he was saying about Dogen was terrific. I'd never heard Dogen in a way that sounded clear. Very clear, very helpful. It was such a relief, so I could, even though I was half asleep, I was just listening to him so intently that it was the first time that I really appreciated what's meant by follow the breath. Concentrate deeply in this moment. put everything into this moment because I was putting everything I could into listening to something that was so important, even though I couldn't stay awake. So, sound familiar? I think some of us have had some issues with falling asleep in the Zendo. It's one of the really interesting points of practice. It's not a problem. It is a really interesting practice when you get that nodding off situation. And there's so much we can learn about the waking dream, the sleeping dream, and just the energetic quality of the mind, of perception. So now, Shohaku Komura translates the word pearl as jewel. Shohaku is the only translator that doesn't use the word pearl. And he has his reasons which he explains. And the first reason is that pearl has a color. The first thing we think of when we think of pearl is white. And when you put a white pearl on another color, immediately there's separation, a white sphere against the other object's color. There's a line of separation. Okumura prefers to translate the word pearl as transparent jewel. And that takes on the color of its object. So if you put the transparent jewel on a brown tablecloth, the jewel becomes brown. If you put it on a flower, it becomes fuchsia. So seeing the pearl as a transparent jewel demonstrates the way that it expresses oneness. It's one of the aspects of one bright pearl. The jewel unites and becomes one with whatever object is arising. That's the quality that is intimated in as one of the aspects of this fascicle that he's pointing to about the mind. And of course, in addition to lustrous white pearls, there are also black pearls, which, when I looked it up, come from black-lipped oysters. What a description, black-lipped oysters. Oh boy. But Dogen, at the time that Dogen wrote, I think sometime in the 1240s, he may never even have heard or seen a black pearl in Japan at that time, because they didn't show up in those waters particularly. Black is used to describe a black pearl that has a dark body, but actually there's no true black in black pearls. They're more blue or purple, green, brown, sometimes silver, and they have a lot of different shapes. So primarily they're round. And one of the commercial sites that I looked at, they said the various shapes of pearls that are not round, they're called Baroque pearls, reflect light from very many different angles, which make the overtones really pop. I just have to chuckle at the use of that word pop. It's very popular right now. So black or white, green or silver are attachment to pearls, and their beauty, it becomes a hindrance to the neutrality of this fascicle, which is another reason why Shohaku wanted to use a different word, because we immediately get involved in beauty. And there's no problem with beauty, but there's all kinds of other things in the world beside beauty, and that are contained equally in this one bright jewel of a world, this one bright pearl. And another other thing he points out is it joins in a whole lineage of jewels in the Buddhist pantheon. There's a Mani jewel, which appears in the Lankavatara Sutra, and the Complete Enlightenment Sutra, and the Sharingama Sutra. The metaphor of the Mani jewel is used in many different ways. For instance, there's the jewel in the network of Indra's net, which I'm going to return to in a minute. There's also the Mani jewel that is Jesus' wish-fulfilling jewel. And Chosen writes of that jewel in this way. She says, "The warm and brilliant light that radiates from the jewel and illuminates the deepest reaches of hell. And when Jesus descends into the realms of confusion and darkness, the pure light of the Sintamani jewel attracts beings to her, to be able to hear and see the Dharma." So when we translate it as one bright jewel, as one bright pearl, we disconnect the reference from the long history in Buddhism of symbols of the bright jewel. And this disconnection is one of the things that Shohaku is taking issue with. So I'll get to Indra's net in a minute. But the main practice point of this fascicle, of this treatise, is to accept all conditions as one bright jewel. All conditions are part of one bright jewel. The light and the dark, the difficult and the easy. All the different qualities of practice, the heart of practice, and the experiences we have as people of the way are all part of one bright pearl. And the experiences we have of human beings on this planet, all of it, and the planet itself. So one bright pearl, I'm going to use that term now. Now that I've said why we should use another term, I'm going to go back to pearl. It functions in infinite ways. And in one of the sutras that we've been chanting, it says 10,000 things glisten and express the Dharma. Everything expresses the Dharma in this one bright jewel. I had a question yesterday from one of you about what are the 10 directions? The whole world in the 10 directions is one bright pearl. The 10 directions are you ready? It's very esoteric. East, south, west, north, northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, above and below. Everything falls in those directions. And tomorrow we're going to learn about it in the dance that will give us a body feel for the 10 directions. So as words, the directions are relative, they're concepts, and they're not necessarily directly experienced. We are in the habit of thinking those terms in relation to places and all of that, but proprioceptively, we don't really experience it particularly, which demonstrates how easy it is to not even notice that we are interpreting the world through concept rather than direct experience. Not a problem, just interesting to know about this, to see this. That the 10 directions are included in the description of, in the One Bright Pearl fascicle, and they point, he says, the whole world in the 10 directions. They point in every direction in the endless characteristic of space itself. So it's edgeless. These references have no basis except in the way we habitually organize our sense of place and placement. The clear, bright mind, which reflects the one bright pearl awareness that we can experience, is only experienced directly. The clear, bright mind we only experience directly. So we take it on faith before we've actually had a personal experience of what that is pointing at. When we chant the Heart Sutra, at the end is the mantra, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. This mantra describes minutely the functioning of one bright pearl, of the mind of one bright pearl. Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Can remind us that the world in all the 10 directions is one bright pearl. Every time we chant that, one bright pearl. Gate, Gate means gone, gone. The whole thing says gone, 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 completely beyond. And somewhere else it says to the other shore, just so that we don't get too scared. We're going to arrive somewhere earthy, feet on the ground kind of arrival. Gone, gone. What does that mean, gone, gone? It's referring to gone beyond thoughts, which throw up a screen of our own making, a screen of experiences, memories, plans, fantasies, everything, everything. And sometimes in this practice, we're prompted to stop thinking in Zazen, which is not so helpful. It's not so helpful because if we approach it that way, it's almost impossible. Because we don't think because we will thinking. Thinking just happens. It's one of the natural excretions of our mind, of our cognitive mind. So it's not so essential, it's not the only essential thing to do that happens in Zazen. And it's not a problem if you don't find that you can stop thinking. This really is a tradition and a practice of inquiry. So we don't have to believe anything, but we can look into everything in this one bright pearl. We can look into everything. And when we approach, it is very important to have an experience of the thinking mind turning off in the long run. But it's also very natural. So we don't have to fixate it on it, and we don't have to get very worried and wrapped up in the effort, the willing, the discipline, stop the mind. Because usually we hear it as a kind of a mean imperative. Like when you're a little kid and you're told to do something, you don't even know what the words mean. That's kind of the situation in a lot of Zen, actually. No wonder that our inner child gets all upset. So it's not important to make the mind stop. That needs to not be our major concern. But patience and persistence in making it possible for all the things that stimulate the body and the mind to just be withdrawn, which is what happens, and it's one reason why Sesshin is so difficult. it's distressing when we don't have our usual fun. Whether it's painful or not, it's just more fun than just sitting there doing nothing. But we gentle into quiet mind. We gentle into quiet mind. I often think it's like, and I know when Junior has talked about training horses, you gentle a horse into patterns of behavior. You gentle, if a child is lucky, they're with parents who gentle them into learning how to be a social being. Show them the way, gently, age appropriately, with kindness and clear modeling. So we gentle into quiet mind, and then it just stops when it does. It stops when it does. So this thing about, coming back over and over and over, that's what we can really believe. It's hard to believe that something like that, come back over and over and over, is really what we're wanting. But actually, that's what allows the mind to relax enough to disinvest in entertainment. But you have to go through all of your stuff. We all do. Gate, go beyond. Paragate, go beyond a personal separate identity. What's me and what's not me. Beyond what I feel. Beyond what I like. Beyond what I don't like. Beyond my opinions and the attitudes I inherited and experienced in my family and culture. And my physical sensations. And the things that I'm totally involved in my life right now. Who I am, where I belong, me and mine, this narrative self that's always resonating and organizing experience according to habit that is long cultivated and practiced. So of course it takes patience and persistence to let all of that settle down. This is our karmic bundle. And part of that is thinking that when we hear a phrase like one bright pearl, we have to understand it. As opposed to really kind of rest into it as a terrific poetic metaphor. And that is true, essentially, in how everything works together. All things work together. Right? All things arise together. In Sesshin, and every day, we can start to doubt that we've come to any understanding of what Dharma points us to. Kind of like Zhuan Sha, when he decides to strike out for other teachers and leave his current teacher. Now, he didn't do it because he's disgruntled, because he has a good friend in his teacher. He's done a lot of work and he's gotten a lot of clarity, but still, there's more to see. And this life of inquiry can get really tedious and downright boring if we refuse, or if we just can't figure out how to settle down and practice with it, which is probably the case for most of us. I mean, there are some natural meditators, look at it, not meditators, but awake and fully engaged. A 3-year-old will show us how that is. But then we have to go through the whole process of becoming an adult, and then maybe getting back to that clear, bright mind that is our original inheritance before everything got so screwed up, forgotten about. Because when you come to settle into clear, bright mind in meditation, it's very familiar. Oh, I remember this. And then immediately it's gone, and we try to get it back. So, this practice is really a very simple approach to this life of our very own in the here and now. So, but we jump from this thing to that thing all the time in the Zendo and in our life, in pursuit of some certainty. So, you have a little sample of clear, bright mind. You want it back, and you want to be able to hold on to it and live it all the time. Don't want the other qualities, states of mind. I just don't want it anymore. So thinking of life, we come to think of life kind of as a thing, as something that's solid and fixed and ossified, and we want to get free, and we've tasted that freedom, and then we're back in it again here. But life is not, doesn't work like that, as you have already seen with your own direct experience. And we forget that living is a function. It's a continuous, it's a process, unfolding together with everything. Now that's such a truism. Life is a process. But, it is. It's true. It's continually unfolding with everything. There's no life apart from the functioning of everything together. Breathing is functioning together with everything that makes up our atmosphere, together with your exhale, my inhale. Walking is functioning, thinking is functioning, all dependent on conditions, certain conditions, always changing. And you can't find anything that doesn't function according to its conditions and together with all things. Now that's what One Bright Pearl is an image for, right there. Dogen says, the entire world in the 10 directions is neither vast nor minute, neither square nor round. It's not neutral. It's not active. It's not obvious. The entire world in the 10 directions is not obvious. Thank you, Dogen. That's the kind of thing that converts people to like Dogen when he says something like that. It's not obvious. It is beyond, date. It is beyond the coming and going of birth and death. Thus, past days have already left, and the present starts from here. Life is not a thing, and it doesn't stand still. Not solid, not stationary. Not one thing, but all together. One bright pearl. Not just one thing. So we have a habit of ceaselessly changing things and making the things we chase into the self. And we chase the self that's still missing something. This is like being battered continually by a high wind, sometimes hurricane force. A friend said to me, spiritual stability is developing an unshakable equanimity in the face of the worldly winds. Spiritual stability is developing an unshakable equanimity. Boy, wouldn't you like it? Unshakable equanimity in the face face of the worldly winds. And actually, one of the reasons why we do Zazen so much is to discover a stability in our practice, a stability of attention. And the mind becomes stable. Even if we can't kind of settle into stability right now, we've done it before, we can do it, we can get to that stable, grounded, still, quiet place again, once we have discovered it. But having the first discovery can be takes great determination. Okay, so in the face of the worldly winds, which I've talked about a fair number of times, so raise your hand if you can relate to this continuum, pleasure, pain. Oh, it's kind of unanimous. Gain and loss. I see hands going up over there. Success and failure. And how about praise and criticism? And I've already done 4, let me give a 5th. Status and disgrace. Wow. Not only Trump, all of us have had that. That feeling of disgrace is the shame that can be so called up by Zen practice. Because usually we can distract so successfully from it. But so much of our life energy goes into avoiding ever really having that experience, which really battens down our life energy if you happen to be a person that's really struggling with a lot of shame. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond the worldly winds. Doesn't necessarily mean we're not still subject to them, but we are aware when we are. And that makes all the difference. Parasamgate means gone completely beyond, even beyond time, beyond the personal experience of time, or beyond the experience of personal time. So you may notice this in Zazen. Sometimes, ring the bell, ring the bell, ring the bell. Every moment is an hour. And other times, you might feel really confused because the bell rings and you just started to sit. Isn't that interesting? So whenever you're waiting in a line, or for a phone call, for a friend at a cafe, for a diagnosis, these are when the self is hostage to an entirely personal sense of time. Especially that waiting for diagnosis. I don't know, some of us have been through that. But if while waiting, on the other hand, you're concentrated, absorbed maybe in an interaction you're witnessing, or a quality of the light, or the breath in Zazen, because you really get into it, the self isn't relevant. It isn't filling awareness separately. There are no thoughts, there's just breath, there's just the conversation you're listening to over there. There's just that today, most people were deep in meditation here, but I noticed that there was emergency lights right outside going on. And so I thought, should I go out and see if they're picking up a migrant, I mean, I really got into what should I do about this light, and it's just really interesting. And it was completely filling my screen, as thoughts of emergency do, right? We're designed for that. But when we are very concentrated, there's no thought, there's no judgment, there's no waiting going on, there's no self. Gone beyond, parasamgate, gone completely beyond. Bodhisvaha. Bodhi is awakened mind or awakening mind, and svaha is means what does it mean? Oh, so be it. So be it. Hail. Great. Yes. So one bright pearl. So we don't, in Sesshin, we don't fixate by making this moment into a separate thing. And that's a wonderful instruction. That's something to look at if you're trying to figure something out while doing zazen. You know, what is this thing? What's arriving right now? What's departing? That's the impermanence contemplation. Ceaselessly, directly experience 10,000 years. That's from one of our chants. How absurd it is to understand this constantly streaming reality as something separate from ourselves. There is no separation. And if you try to run away from the reality that things are exactly as they are, then even your running away is part of the reality. It's part of the one great pearl, the one bright pearl. And right now, all this is one bright pearl. Dogen says, Avalokiteshvara is right here. The embodiment of compassion is right here, is you. Maitreya is the bright jewel manifesting. Wisdom brings us all right here. Sangha is the bright jewel manifesting. You, me, the sky, the rug. This really conservative rug compared to the rug that we sat on last Rohatsu Sesshin, which was a wild ride. It was very difficult to quiet the mind because they were just these bold patterns going everywhere.
Which I vacuumed every day.
So, the one sitting next to you, the zabuton cushioning you, all of this, such generosity is this one bright offering, this one bright jewel. So now this is just the end of the second full day. We have some wonderful practice now coming up. Now that we've really settled down, and we have tomorrow we'll have 4 people joining us, and then Friday a couple more. We can function as a sangha and receive and help them settle too. We can all come back, and we can also be sure that we're going to have some restlessness and some boredom and some of everything. And maybe I always think some of my worst torture thoughts are sure to come up during a session. But it's so good to know them, to know what they are. So it's like, there you are. That's the same as Mara. You know, the Buddha said, Mara, now I know you. We all have our own. Bodhisvaha. Good night, all in the Zoom world.